What is racial intelligence? Racial intelligence is an understanding that there's only one race, God's human divine race. Many people have been fooled over the years into thinking that the language that they speak, the color of their skin, the culture that they represent, all are part of their race. That is a falsehood. If you speak a different language, that does not change your race. If you represent a different culture, that does not change your race. If your skin color has a darker hue to it, that does not change your race. Even as a so-called black man growing up in Harlem, there are people who have the same color of their complexion who all have different cultures that they represent. If they grew up in different continents like South America or Africa or even Europe, they will have different cultural outtakes than someone of myself. Even if they grew up in the same country and they grew up in different regions of the country, whether they grew up in the South or the West, the way they carry themselves in this culture will all be different. So it is an understanding that we must come to, that color, culture, and language does not change your race. We are all actual products of an environment. Since the rise of Europe, many of us have come to embrace the ways that the Europeans were thinking. They were taught to be individualistic. And individualistic, they start to see that the countries that they represent became supreme. So if you were an Englishman, if you were a Spaniard, if you were a Frenchman, you started to see your country as the supreme country. Many wars were fought over these things as they started to expand their cultural reach. But even back then, color did not matter because the Moors, who were the scientists in early Europe, were black. They weren't called black, they were called Moors. But if you actually go back in history and look at the input that the Moors put into society, then you will also see that the Moors were always a part of the culture, the race that these different countries have all embraced. If you go back and look at some of our finest philanthropists, some of our finest thinkers, people like Plato and Aristotle, you will see that they were all students of the Egyptian mystery school. Actually, they were failed students of the Egyptian mystery school, and many of their philosophies came from there. But that's not what we're going to talk about. What we're going to talk about is where we are right now in American history and in world history, because what we're dealing with is the fallout of chattel slavery. In the rise of America, chattel slavery became a major part on how this country was built. And the difference between chattel slavery and other forms of slavery is that chattel slavery made the slaves property of their owners. Let me repeat that for you. Chattel slavery made the slaves property of the owners. It was important to make color an issue during those times because it would have been harder to enslave a white man in a white culture. It was harder to enslave the Indians because they were consistently able to get away in the land that was indigenous to them. So bringing over Africans and building this country, color became a major basis to how we built things. In America, during the early times, black people or Africans were considered to be 3/5 of a man. Later, that was taken away when we ratified the 13th Amendment and they were now made free people. But the cultural differences, the biases put in by color still haunts us today. Many people are still following the thought process that came to build America and understanding that color of skin determined race. The color of your skin cannot determine your race because it cannot separate levels of intelligence. It cannot separate levels of consciousness. What we were dealing with were levels of tribalism, because tribalism also determined our survival. Since we were not stronger or faster than the animal kingdom, we had to come together as tribes, groups of people who would then hunt together. That was a matter of our survival. As we bring that more forward to more recent history, that tribe mentality is what allowed chattel slavery to become something that was ingratiated in the forming of America. The early Eastern Europeans who came over from Europe into America were still praying to a black Jesus. They were still praying to a black Jesus until they were told that by praying to a black Jesus, they would then be allowing the slaves to notice their greatness. They would be allowing the slaves to build strength. So they too had to start to pray to a white Jesus in order for the God complex not to be passed over to the slaves. It would be harder to enslave a man or a woman if they knew that they were still the same color of the God that most people prayed to. So we got a different color of who Jesus was in order to reinforce chattel slavery. Chattel slavery over the years was still not easily given up. As we became free men, there were still innate biases that were part of American culture. Those innate biases forced segregation. It was a force of people not getting a chance to be educated. And as those things spread, it became part of the world thought process. The Statue of Liberty, when first given to America, was put in the image of a slave, because the Statue of Liberty was not something that was here put for, Ellis Island to represent the new immigrants coming in, but it was here to show the freedom that was given to black people. America rejected the first Statue of Liberty because it looked like a slave. The Statue of Liberty that we currently have in America is actually the third Statue of Liberty that was created. It was created in the image of the creator's mother. The inventor of the Statue of Liberty made sure that this Statue of Liberty that we currently visit looked like his mother. But to make sure we did not forget that this was a symbol of liberation of slaves, there was shackles put on her hands and her feet so that they would still remember that this was a liberation of a group of people. Racial intelligence lets us know that we are all more connected than we are apart, that there is more of us that are the same than we are different. We all breathe air. We all drink water. We all eat food. These are all similarities between people. Now, what changes is the culture in which we represent. The culture in which we represent is what separates some of our thinking. But there has been a rise in the hip-hop culture over the last 30 years. The rise of the hip-hop culture has surpassed the other cultural differences. because the rise of the hip hop culture went past skin color. There were great white icons in hip hop since its beginning. People like the Beastie Boys ran with artists like Run DMC. People like Eminem all made it okay for you to be white and black if you're going by skin colors, and those aren't even true skin colors, because white is the absence of color and black is darkness. So we are all different shades of brown, but let's not debate that right now. When we're going through these different cultural differences, the advantageous way of looking at it is there are 30 years of people who have embraced the hip hop culture. There are kids in the suburbs as well as kids in urban communities, kids across the world who've all been fans of hip hop. And these fans of hip hop have realized that they are closer in how they see life than they are different. They all listen to the same type of music. They all dance the same type of dance. And with hip hop aging, it has now become the new elevator music. There are old school songs that you will now hear as elevator music, on top 40 music, as parts of cultural commercials. When you listen to today's commercials, you'll hear old school hip hop songs as part of the background in these commercials. So, racial intelligence. What does that mean? That means that we should all come to an understanding that culture, that tribalism, that color, that language does not separate us. All it does is enhance who we are as people. It enhances the variety in the human race. It gives us a chance to enjoy travel a little bit more. It gives us a chance to see different things in different ways. But it does not make us innate. It does not make us in a place where we have to worry about how different we are, but it should be a place where we can celebrate both the similarities and the difference. God made us all connected. We all have a spirit or a soul. We all have an afterlife, if that's what you believe in. There's always something that connects us more than things that take us apart. Our racial intelligence allows us to come together and see how the different cultures and the different tribes affect the way people think. It affects the way people react. It affects the way people are able to get along. But it does not change who you are as a person. As a person, you are still a human being. As a species, you are still a Homo sapien. See, Homo sapiens are the same, no matter what culture you come from, no matter what language you speak, no matter who you think you are, we are still the same. We are still threatened by bears. We're still threatened by lions. We're still threatened by larger animals that we cannot take down by ourselves. In getting that racial intelligence, we can get closer to the teamwork that makes the dream work. It has been teamwork that allowed tribes to survive over hundreds of years. It has been teamwork that's allowed cultures to grow strong. It has been teamwork that allowed countries to become very prevalent. It is the culturalism that has allowed separation. It has allowed someone like an Adolf Hitler to go and hunt down Jews. The rise of Germany as as a country. It is the culturalism that has allowed us to oppress others. Like when the Chinese came over to America and worked on the railroads. It was those cultural differences that allowed us to fool ourselves into thinking that there was much